Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever, whenever you are listening. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, welcoming you to episode 223 of Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. And this is our special Independence Day program. Every year on or around Independence Day, I like to hold a special show, and I'm going to do a reading of the Declaration of Independence. Many of you listening, I know, do know this document, but even so, I think once a year we need to go back to this very, very special document and just reread it and think about some of the things that are said in there. Now, obviously, have a little bit of restriction on time, so I am going to have to do a little bit of editing on here. And I think the list of the facts, the usurpations that the Founding Fathers put into the document, all the things that they felt King George and the British Crown were doing bad. I'm not going to repeat all of them. Like I said, I think it takes a little bit too long to go through all of them. But I will pick out the ones that I believe are applicable in this time. And other than that slight editing, I want to go back to all of the original words. I think it's very important that we go back now and every so often and remember that this document was written by a bunch of very, very, very clever people. However, I do have one other thing. Before we start this special show, I need to make a special announcement, say a few words about a very good friend of mine, and that is the owner of the Red State Talk Radio Network. Primo Mondoni just informed his associates, all of us that provide content to Red State Talk Radio, that he has actually been plagued recently with some very, very serious medical problems. Now, as the trooper he is, he insisted he did not want to receive sympathy and support emails, and I'm honoring that request. But he didn't say anything about spiritual support. I would therefore ask all of my listeners to keep Primo in their prayers and thoughts. I'm a great believer in the power of positive thinking, and so, please help me supporting this great patriot. So, as I said, pre-July 4th, on or around July 4th, and I thought it'd be good to do it before July 4th this year, reading of the Declaration of Independence. Just say hi to Rex, who has arrived in the chat room. Thanks for joining us, Rex. And anyone else who is listening live, if you click on the little green speech button at the bottom of the screen, the right-hand part of the screen, you can see the chat room, and you can put your questions and comments in there, and later on in the show I'll let people know how they might be able to contact me if you're not listening to the show live. Anyway, Declaration of Independence. This was an action of the Second Continental Congress and issued, obviously, on July 4th, 1776. described as the unanimous declaration of the 13 states of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's gods entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation until his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He has endeavoured to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept amongst us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For imposing taxes upon us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offences, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. for suspending our own legislator and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So, folks, there's that unbelievably succinct document that says so much in so few words. And when we look at all these crap bills that we have coming out, and they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, not even words, but pages, to do that in basically one or two sheets of paper is absolutely unbelievable. Took me, a little over 5 minutes to read. Now, I took out some of the list of the usurpations, which is also in there. If we added that in, at most you're talking about a 10-minute read. That's just an absolutely brilliant document. And as I like to do every year, is to go back and take some highlights out of there, and with my foreigner's view, if you like, see what I find is great, do my little analysis of it, and hopefully remind you why this is such an important document. Our founding documents are really very special documents, both the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution. While neither of them were perfect, they are probably the best documents of this kind that have ever been written and may ever be written in the future. So, less so obviously with the Declaration of Independence. It has less effect on our Constitution, but later in the year we'll also do a reading, some salient parts of the Constitution when it comes close to Constitution Day. And it's just amazing how good that document is. And people say, well, it's an old document, bunch of old fogies that wrote it, and it doesn't really apply today. No, it applies today, and I just wish we would look at both of these documents more often. So that's why, as I said, this is my annual thing to remind you all, and let's have a look at what else there is in this document. What I'd like to pick up as a untrained constitutional scholar, if you like, no training whatsoever, just read it a few times, read the Declaration of Independence, but there are some things that jump out of me. And of course, the start of the document, there were those famous words: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So just that very first sentence, there are some very key things there. First of all, that all men are created equal. We know at the time that there were a lot of issues around slavery in the United States, and yet they took the courage to write that all men are created equal. Now, it took a long time before those words were truly honored, and I think we have to be very honest about that. But I think that the left always says, the left is always saying, oh, well, these were a bunch of slave owners who wrote this, and we should ignore these documents because then, they don't apply today. No, I think they wrote it there. All men are created equal. That was what was in their heart. They knew that it couldn't be achieved overnight. And you read the Federalist Papers, you read papers and documents from that time, and the years afterwards, the Constitution, you realize that there were forces at work there trying to move in that direction. But here, they put their heart right out on the line and said, here it is. And they didn't say men of color or white men. They just said all men are created equal. The second part of the sentence talks about the certain unalienable rights, and this goes back, of course, to their idea of natural laws, that nature's God gives us certain rights. And note that they don't restrict them to the three that are specifically mentioned in the document, right? Amongst these are... So they mention perhaps what they felt at that time were the three most important. And they, at the same time, made sure to remind us that they are not just the only ones, right? So that they are endowed by their Creator. Remember, these certain unalienable rights don't come from the government. It's another key thing of this first sentence. I mean, there is so much in this first sentence. It is mind-blowing to me how much they were able to squeeze into that one sentence. How many words are we talking about? 20, 25 words, maybe less. How much they squeezed in just that first sentence. I mean, just talking about one sentence. So, endowed by their Creator, so remember, not the government, with certain unalienable rights, rights which cannot be taken away by anyone, by a government, by another person, no one, that among these, so there are others, but are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, again, and I'm not an in-depth study of the Constitution and of that period of time, but I do know a little bit about it. One of the things that I know is that in some of the early drafts, it was life, liberty, and stuff. Yes, and property. But again, because of the whole discussion around slavery and the fact that slaves were deemed property, they decided to change it from property to the pursuit of happiness. And again, this was apparently a very definitive step that was taken to resolve that whole slavery issue and kind of take it out of the discussion at this point. Now, again, the left will also say, no, these were slave owners, old fogies, they're bad. No, I think they were really doing what they could. Remember, within the bounds of the practicalities of that time. Imagine that you said, well, let's take a good example. And you know how much I dislike illegal immigrants. But there is a practicality. Suppose we found a way tomorrow to literally say we can pick up every single illegal immigrant in the United States, pick them up, and ship them off back to their home country. We got some new computer, we got some new transportation system, kind of a Star Trek type thing, and we can just beam them back to where they want to go. Much as I agree that the illegal immigrants shouldn't be here illegally, but for the American economy, it would be a disaster if that many people all of a sudden disappeared. Same thing, we have a practicality there. And like it or not, that was the same thing that the founders faced. Now, for them, their practicality was slavery. Now, we have the pseudo-slavery of the illegals, and let's face it, it is not much better. And whether you're from the right or the left, it is a form of slavery. But it's in there, and they did their best to resolve that slavery discussion and not let it impact too much on this Declaration of Independence. And we know they also worked very hard on the Constitution later. Anyway, so back to the Declaration. So that was that first sentence, so powerful. They then explained that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And this is a reminder, we seem to have forgotten that, or I should say, we haven't forgotten that. But the jerks in DC have forgotten that, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So it's us, they work for us, they seem to forget that. And to secure these rights, which are not given by the government, but to secure these rights that are endowed by our Creator, to secure these unalienable rights, something that people cannot take away, we have to institute government. In other words, we need government to protect our rights, not to grant us rights, not to give us free stuff, but to grant our rights for the things that are given to us already by our Creator. So again, also in a very short number of words, some very, very powerful words. So here we are. So we know that all men are created equal. We have these rights that are given to us by our Creator. Amongst those rights, but they are not the only ones, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we need governments to protect us to keep those rights. And that's very true. I mean, we talk a lot, and I've had this discussion before, I know, on my show, but also people like Glenn Beck and Mark Levin will talk about it. Talk about left and right. And in some ways, we always say there's no difference between left and right. That's right. When we talk about the political spectrum, we should be going from anarchy to tyranny. So without a government is anarchy. Anybody can do anything. And you could sort of say, well, yeah, we've all got good people and we all know what our rights are, etc. But in practice, that doesn't happen. On the other hand, we have tyranny, which is when the government does everything, which is what dear leader is trying to take us towards, and then Hildebeest behind him will want to make it even worse. Talked about that last week on the show. So that's really the spectrum. We shouldn't be talking left or right. We should be talking between tyranny and anarchy. And somewhere in the middle, We have to find somewhere where we give the government power to protect us from those that don't want to follow the rules. That's all it comes down to, really. That can be internal, talking about the police, etc. It can be external, countries that want to do us harm. But that's really what it's about. It can be external, companies that want to do us harm militarily or commercially. And so we have to make treaties, we have to regulate commerce outside, but internally, no. That is either the duty of the states, but not necessarily the government. Government should be pretty much outward-facing. And by letting the government become so huge and so inward-facing was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made, and it's going to be a very difficult one to turn around. But not impossible. So let's be very positive about that. Not impossible at all. Now, the Founding Fathers were also very, very careful. And they said, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. So you shouldn't just change something because you don't like it. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. So as the government got bigger and bigger, we didn't want to overthrow the government because we sort of said, well, we can accept this. This is sufferable. But at a certain point, a breaking point is reached, and I think we're getting close to that breaking point. And at that point, right, when the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. So in this document, even before the Constitution, they're talking about this fact that, hey folks, if it gets bad, it is your right and duty to throw off such government. And of course, in this document, they're saying, and that's what we're doing right now because we've had enough of the British Crown. Now, some of the usurpations talked about refusal of assent to laws. Not quite the same today, but the laws that have been assented, and in many cases even assented by dear leader himself, he refuses to execute because that's really his job. He thinks he has to make laws, but he's wrong. He is the one that's supposed to execute the laws, make sure the laws are followed. He's forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. So taking laws like in Arizona, where they wanted to tighten up on illegal immigration, and just saying, no, you can't do that. Another one, the British Crown was endeavouring to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalisation of foreigners. Now, of course, in those days, it was the other way around. They wanted more people to come and develop the country. There was lots of space. For us, it's the other way around. We've got a lot of people here. We don't really want them coming, but But King Barry is still obstructing the laws for naturalisation of foreigners. Our laws say there's a process they have to go through, and he's just saying, well, skip the process, you can come in anyway. Another one of the usurpations. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. And if that isn't a succinct description of Washington, D.C., I don't know what is. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. And this, of course, really applies to King Barry's love affair with that awful body, the UN. Time to get rid of that. He has kept amongst us in time of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. So say, well, we've got posse comitatus, we don't have standing armies. Yes, we do. What about all these militaristic SWAT teams in the police? That's similar to what we have there. Are legislators involved with that in any way? Nope. No. So, to go to then finally the last paragraph where they actually And that's the one where they really say, okay, here's all the bad things he's done. So because of that, the Crown, the British government, the British people haven't really supported us. Because of all of that, we're going to cut the chains. We're going to cut what binds us with the UK. We are going to become independent. And of course, all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have rights do. And just be aware, at that time, remember, they actually declared independence as 13 individual states, 13 individual countries. It's only later that they started working together. We got the Articles of Confederation because they realized divided they would fall, united they had to stand to be safe. And, of course, then discovered that the Articles of Confederation weren't enough either, and then we came up with that other superb document, the Constitution. And then they ended with this great final sentence: and for the support of this declaration, with firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. And hey, left wing, so when you say there were atheists there are enough in there to have these words. There are enough non-atheists to have these words put in the document. With a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And it's those last three words, our sacred honor, is the main thing that is missing in Washington today.
Reporting from the eye of the storm. This is the worst weather we've seen in quite some time, folks. And I don't see any end in sight. People have been calling in from across the state complaining their basements are flooding. One guy said he now has an indoor swimming pool in his basement. I told him he needs the waterproofing innovations from Basement Systems. If you want a dry basement or crawl space that will weather any kind of storm, you need the patented solutions from Basement Systems. You've seen them on home makeover shows throughout the country. With a lifetime warranty, every solution is custom designed for your basement. Call now for a free estimate, and you'll never have to worry about storms like these again. I'm predicting this storm front is heading your way, so call Basement Systems and relax.
Call 800-205-8665 for your free in-home inspection, or visit basementradiooffer.com. That's 800-205-8665, or visit basementradiooffer.com.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a four-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. My accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call, but I know I need help.
We're Paychecks, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online. We take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a four-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-750-5371. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychecks right now. 877-750-5371. That's 877-750-5371.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us. And thanks for sticking with me through that break. Tonight's show, having limited commercials because it's kind of a special show, but I do have some new ones. And if you're interested in any of those services, please use the 800 numbers reference that helps support the show. For those of you that are not listening live, maybe listening a little bit closer to the real Independence Day. And by the way, I would encourage everyone, please don't call it July 4th. Please use the right words. please use the right words, Independence Day. We need to remind folks what this is about. If we talk about July 4th, it's just another holiday. Let's remind folks this is actually Independence Day, and that's what we're celebrating. Okay, that was the Declaration of Independence. I mean, I could go on for the whole show, but there are some other things I'd like to squeeze in today. And I will beg the indulgence of my listeners. I want to talk a little bit tonight about what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in of itself actually brought out in America. And this is really reflections on small town America, the real America. Now, long-time listeners will know we just recently moved back up to Georgia from Florida, and we've moved to a small town north of Atlanta called Cumming, Georgia. And I didn't realize really. I thought, Cumming's really sort of more like a suburb of Atlanta. We're a little bit north again of the true suburbs like Roswell and Alpharetta, places like that. But I thought Cumming would be the same. This week, I found out it wasn't. And listeners from last week may remember I mentioned I'd had a problem with my back. I was in quite a bit of pain. Didn't have an adult beverage last week because my pain meds, and you can't mix alcohol with that. I do have one this week because I finally said I'm just going to get off those pain meds. But during this week, I started. I had to do some things, and in the middle of the week, I had to go into Cumming, about 2 blocks north of the city center, for an MRI. Now, I was having some problems there because in the MRI you have to lie still, and with the back pain and it shooting down my leg, I actually had to have 2 tries. I went in one day and we couldn't complete the pictures. I just couldn't keep still long enough. So I went back and I spoke to the doctor, and they said, well, take a double dose of pain medicine, but you can't drive if you do that because it's really going to affect your driving. Well, I had some problems because my daughter was at work. My wife had to go down to Florida. She'd had a long time appointment to go visit with some friends, and she really couldn't change that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go there. I'll take my double dose of pills. I'll drive there before I take the pills, wait around a bit, go in for the MRI, and then afterwards I'll see if I'll see how I feel, see how I'm reacting, and I can always take a taxi home, and then my daughter, when she gets back from work, can go pick me up. So I went through the MRI. I managed to just get through. The pills didn't help that much, but we managed to get the pictures that we needed. And so afterwards I said, well, I haven't really been that affected, but I still don't trust myself. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wander that 2 blocks up to the city square, and we've got a nice, kind of one of these historical city squares with a courthouse and little stores and restaurants around. I'm going to just wander up there, maybe get something to drink or an ice cream or something, and then wander back, and I'll see how I feel, and if I'm still bad, if I think I'm, any problem at all with driving, I can still call a cab. But let's see what goes on. Well, anyway, so I did that. It took me about 20 minutes to walk those 2 blocks, probably about 3 times as long as I normally would, because I just had to stop every so often, find a wall or a seat to sit on, rest, because it really was quite painful. I wandered round the city square, didn't stay very long because it was quite painful, and having taken 20 minutes to go up there, 25 going back, I figured out after an hour probably be a lot better. And I really checked, and I was not kind of woozy or have any slow reactions or anything in any way. Just the pain, if anything, was slowing me down. So I started walking back. Well, on the way back, one car pulled alongside and said, "Are you okay? Can we take you anywhere?" Another couple of people came out of their houses or their offices and said, "You look like you're in a really bad way. Is there anything we can do?" And because I was taking frequent breaks to see, that gave me time to sort of sit there and think about things. And I was sort of thinking, this is really small town America. This is America. All that crap up in D.C. is not America. Unfortunately, a lot of all the crap going on in the cities is not America. All that crap going on the border is not America. But something like what I was experiencing, and just the thing of wandering around that town. I mean, here we are. I mean, we're less than 40 minutes away from Atlanta, and you wouldn't expect to have something that sort of, to me, special. And this is America. And I suddenly realized, and I'm sorry if I'm getting sort of very sentimental, but I realized, you know what? This is why we came here. I am an immigrant. I came here specifically, but it was just this sense of opportunity, of friendliness, of people being, yeah. It just, it kind of washed over me, and like I said, maybe it was the drugs. And I see Rex is saying to me, Percocet and 7 is what he uses. Well, I was told very strictly no mixing with alcohol, but and I was on Norco, which I believe is not quite as strong, and I had one of the weakest ones. So, but anyway, but maybe it was making me a bit funny. I don't know. But I just sort of sat there and thought, yeah, this is why we came here. And then on the way back with these people helping, sort of realized, that is amazing. And that is really the spirit of the American people. And all these things with the government trying to force us to give stuff to people. Americans are the most charitable country in the world, hands down. And that, to me, that's part of that beautiful heart of America. And that, like I said, I hope I'm not sort of waxing too sentimental, but with all the bad things going on, it really gave me a sense of optimism. So maybe I was high on the drugs, I don't know. But it gave me such a sense of optimism just to realize that, that's what it's about. Now, before we moved to Cumming, we lived in Celebration. Celebration was a town set up by the Disney company where they also tried to create this same sort of small-time USA feeling. And very early on, when we first moved there, I have to say it was kind of going in that direction. But as it got larger and larger, and basically got more commercialized, the town center that they had became more commercialized. Instead of a grocery, they had gift shops, restaurants, and those are also necessary, but you also need ordinary shops. It became more commercialized because as they got more and more houses, and then as we got in, as there were mortgage problems, people having to sell their houses, they were being sold to not just Americans, but also to vacationers, foreigners, right? Not immigrants, but vacationing foreigners. So that changed the flavor of the town. And it made me realize as well, you can't force people to be charitable. You can't force people to have a small town mentality. You can encourage it, but you can't force them. And I don't want to disparage my home country or countries, long story, but in essence I have more than one. But let's go back to Europe. Don't want to disparage them to say, well, if I'd have been walking around sort of basically showing signs of being half crippled, because that's what I was doing when the people stopped to ask me if I needed help, that could have happened in Europe. But the difference is there nowadays, people realize that the government, the nanny state, is going to look after you. So there'll be a short bus in a while, which can pick Stefan up and take him home or do whatever he needs to do. So we don't need to get involved. Let's just ignore him. Let's go about our way. Now, I may be a little cynical about that, but I think you'll not find that same charitable heart over there anymore because it's been taken away by the nanny state. So that gave me this great sense of optimism that America is not dead. It may be dying. It may be difficult to bring it back to life. I hope not. But it's still there. That heart is still beating. So, like I said, it gave me a sense of optimism. And then, of course, I had the cold shower, because then I thought, why are we letting this be changed and be changed so drastically? Why are we going to this sense of entitlement instead of this sense of helping other people? And there's a difference. And that's, like I said, to me, that's that celebration story. You can't legislate people to be charitable. You can't make them. The only way you can make them is you can force them. Right? Basically at the point of a gun. Put very succinctly, because that's what the IRS does. I mean, they may not bring guns to your door, but if you don't pay, what happens? You get, right, the SWAT teams coming to so, but you can't legislate that heart. It has to be encouraged, but not forced. And that, so that, for me, that was the great learning from that wandering round town. And I did drive home safely. By the time it was quite warm, so I think I sweated out all of the drugs, and then I drove home very carefully, not too slow, but just carefully, and had no problems at all. But it was such a revelation for me, and I hope you don't mind, like I said, I hope you don't mind me sharing this with you, because over the last few months, I've always said I wanted to be positive on the show and bring positive things forward, but there's just been so much negative going on. Sometimes it's difficult to find anything positive, or the negative is so negative that it really needs to be brought forward and make sure that people don't forget it. But to me, that was something very, very positive, and I hope that you enjoyed that. So let's see. We do have some more time, and I'm going to try and stick with the positive messages today. We may have to branch into a little bit of less positive things, but let's see what we can do about the positive things for the remainder of the show. So a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, of course, we had some of the elections, and certainly certain ones of them were less positive for the Tea Party. Of course, we had Brat in Virginia. That was a great one. But then we had the Thad Cochran mess in Mississippi. And, of course, then everybody was crowing about that. And then T.W. Shannon didn't get elected, and the mainstream media was all over that. See, the Tea Party, huge losses. Well, let's first of all, before we go into what they weren't telling you, let's just add something to the existing ones. And that is the revelations that came out today that more skullduggery and monkey business in the Thad Cochran campaign. And now it sounds like it could be even more serious. I think I'd mentioned before that that there were some question marks about the number of people that had voted in the runoff election who had also who had also cast votes in the initial primary election, but on the Democratic side, right? So Thad Cochran did a lot of outreach to get as many Democrats to vote for him. And again, legally, he's right. Morally, he's wrong, because the Mississippi law states that if you vote in a primary, even though they have open primaries, you are supposed to vote for that same person in the general election as well. And we know that a lot of the people that they brought across, a lot of the blacks and Democrats that they brought across are not going to do that. But it turned, and I mentioned that they had also started counting and found significant numbers of names that appeared on the Democrat roll and had voted in the Democrat primary. Because the good news is, when they keep the administration of that you came to vote, because it's a primary, they had to indicate which ballot they were giving you. So now they're getting sufficient numbers to call into question whether, because those votes are actually technically illegal, and they can be shown to be illegal. So now we're getting to one that if you put it across the whole state of Mississippi, apparently the percentages come close that it could make the race very tight. However, today something else even worse happened. And I say worse, and again, I'm trying to be positive. It's positive for the Tea Party, but it's very negative for American politics, and it is very disappointing that they would stoop this low. It seems that there are text messages, there are very definitive pieces of evidence that show that people from the Thad Cochran campaign were involved in paying people to have the black Democratic voters come across and vote for Thad Cochran. They're talking about $15 per person being paid to people, probably not to the voters directly, but any kind of money for votes in Mississippi is also a no-no. I think it's probably a no-no in all states, but here again, it is a no-no. Now, interesting to see where this, and it's only just broken, but like I said, I am so disappointed for American politics that it would stoop to this, that we have to show ourselves to be so absolutely disgusting that we would stoop to that. But it's good news for the Tea Party because it means that Chris McDaniels is in there with the chance, and I wish him all the best of luck. And I think all of you, again, times are tight. It's always difficult. There's so many things to give money to. But I think his campaign is going to be spending a lot of money to try and right this wrong. And anything that you can do to help him, I think that would be great. Anyway, so that's some good news. But there's some more. The lamestream media conveniently forgot to tell us about a lot of things going on. So let's have a look and see where the Tea Party is not dead in the recent elections. So these elections over the last 3-4 weeks. So how about Dan Bongino, right? Former Secret Service agent, often appears on some of the talk show hosts for people like, I think, Rush, for Hannity. He's appeared on the radio. He won hands down 84 to 16% in his primary, and no sound about that in any of the lamestream media, and even in I don't even think Fox made a lot of noise about it, maybe one or two of the programs, but they definitely didn't have it in a lot of the news programs, right? And of course we've got to remember Tea Party's not going to win 100% of the races, but at least it would be nice if they would give the devil his due when they do have some successes. Kurt Clausen, right? Tea Party candidate, House seat, Florida's 19th district. Also, no noise about that. In Colorado, Ken Buck won a 4-man primary for Colorado's 4th district. Again, very little in the lamestream media. So we've seen this all the time. Alex Mooney won in West Virginia. Ben Sasse won in Nebraska. It gets mentioned perhaps, and then nothing said about it. And then of course we had Dave Bratt in Virginia, and even that died down very quickly. They wanted to forget about it as quickly as possible because they don't want the Tea Party up there. Oh no. Texas Tea Party dominating. John Ratcliffe defeated incumbent Ralph Hall, who I'm told is the nation's most senior member of Congress, right? And this is the first time an incumbent congressman had been defeated in a runoff since 1996. So the Tea Party, folks, is not dead. They are trying to smother us, of course, but it is not dead. And remember that, folks, because the news is positive. Well, folks, it looks like we're getting to the end of the show. Unfortunately, it's been fun. Next week, more news and views. I've got some things about voting irregularities, more voting stuff. So, folks, the music is starting. It's time to say TTFN. Please join me next week. And remember, please tell your friends. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.